extreme start.
Welcome to another episode. My name is Dean Vass. You can find me on X at #Kangas, Instagram #Kangaroos Podcast. Tonight, I welcome back Siobhan Rowe. Siobhan, it has been a while. I think it's last time you were on, might have been after round one. So the loss against the Bulldogs. It's fair to say you're probably a little frustrated. I've read your tweets on X or whatever they call it now, and and you're probably a little frustrated where we are at. You would have liked a couple more wins by this stage, it's fair to say.
Hi, Dean. Great to be back. I'm definitely glad we didn't record this podcast after Thursday night. I was just saying to you off air that I think it was the first time I've ever sort of been really emotional after the game, and I kind of reflected on why afterwards. And I just feel like at the moment with this group, it's very difficult for them to build a winning culture without winning games of football. And it really felt like on Thursday night, it was that perfect chance. And by no means was it Finbar Maley's fault, but what an experience it would have been for that group to have the young man first game, kick the winning goal on Thursday night on the big stage, primetime TV. It just felt like it was that really good opportunity for that win that might have catapulted a bit more of what we thought we might have seen after the Melbourne win. We just haven't quite gotten there. So it just feels like people always say the wheel's going to turn, the wheel's going to turn. The wheel's not going to turn if we start games the way we have been, though, Dean, and I'm sure we'll touch on it a bit throughout the podcast. But it just feels like when you start the game and give sides a 5-goal advantage, you're always chasing tail. So we'll see. Obviously, we'll preview the game against the Lions, which will be probably the toughest challenge that we've had for the whole year, and see how we go against them. But at the moment, it just feels like the side kind of delivers a good performance, an okay performance, an honourable loss, really crashes out like we saw on Good Friday against Carlton, and then dips in for a few more honourable losses. But I really hope in the back end of the year that this group starts winning games of football, which is what we all expected and wanted at the start of the year. And I think it comes a point in time where all of us just kind of need more than just honourable losses. I'm not saying they didn't perform well on Thursday night and even against Port. Obviously, the Carlton game was a whole different kettle of fish. And I guess the Gold Coast, the second half of that, especially the last sort of quarter, was really disappointing. But we have to start growing as a group. And it just feels like the losing culture is starting to wear everyone out a little bit.
Well, yeah, that's a problem. We've lost far too many games over the last 5 years. I think we've got one of the worst losing records in the last 80 games in the history of the games. I think since 1967 Fitzroy or something like that. I can't remember. It was the last. We've won stuff all in the last 80 games. I did see a stat on that. So it's like 12 wins or something like that. So it's quite. Dennis Pagan had the old saying, "You are judged by wins and losses." That's the industry we're in, and if you're going to judge it, then it's pretty poor. And one person I am going to judge, and that's I got this news late Monday, just before I started the pod with the boys. Scott Clayton has resigned his post, but not only resigned, he's found another job. How on earth, based on the last 5 years building this list, has he found another job in Tassie, out of all places, Siobhan Rowe?
Yeah, I'd love your thoughts on this too, Dean, because we've spoken a lot about this list build, and there's a lot of question marks over it. Obviously, he's nailed some picks, and that's a given. The question mark around Scott Clayton is really quality list builds and recruitment staff are your Geelongs and your Sydneys, where you can pick players from the rough and turn them into really good footballers. Scott Clayton's nailed the obvious. He's made some real big blunders. So I probably don't need to go through all of those, but just the lack of homework on Horne-Francis is probably the biggest one that kind of back a little bit. But I just think he'll of course be a loss because everyone is, but in the big scheme of things, I think if we're able to nail that side of things, I think this is where things will really turn. But you look at the list, and we've spoken in depth about this, at how skewed it is, how it's really just the lack of key position depth, key position drafting in general has been astounding. And He's obviously picked up some good players that have helped center our core in the midfield group that we've got, but we haven't had success in finding gems in the rough, which is the most important part of building a successful list. Is I think our bottom 10 are the reason why a lot of the time that we're languishing at the bottom of the ladder. So you can commend him for some, but I think there's been quite a few blunders that we won't miss at the footy club.
To say the least, the overpaying of average players and giving them long-term contracts that haven't worked out. I don't think any of them really worked out. I mean, Dylan Stevens, he's okay. Zach Fisher, wasn't getting a game at Carlton. There's been Callum Coleman-Jones. We pretty much overpaid for someone on potential after his first 8-10 games in an AFL career. I could keep going on with this, and obviously giving away, it came to a head last year for me when, at the end of the first round, I wasn't even the first round, it's like the middle of the second round. It's pick 27. Oh, let's trade that for a future first rounder, which we all knew was going to be top 5. It looks like it's going to be a lot better than that. It might even be top 2 or top 1, who knows.
Yeah.
To get, a key position player. And look back, like nothing against him. He might be a very good player. He might be a 200-game player. He's shown a bit in the VFL. He got an AFL game. But still, if you're making trades to, at best case scenario, to break even, you never do that trade. And I felt like, I think Frank said it the other day, there's been too many trades that we've done that have been 70-30, like 30-70, I should say, our way. And even Jason Horne-Francis, we still sold pennies on a dollar for him.
Yep.
We should have played hardball with that, and we just gave up far too easy. Nothing against Wardlaw. We got Wardlaw. That's fantastic. But, we should have got a lot more. We should have asked for Josh Sinn. It looks like he's going to be a promising rebound defender. I could go on about this, Siobhan. And I guess next question is, he can take Rawlings with him, Siobhan.
Look, I think Dean, the really you made some really good points there about our recruiting from other clubs as well. And there's a few players I'm sure we'll go through that are even in the side for our upcoming game against the Lions. That I've always thought if it's the chicken or the egg with a lot of this stuff, if it's been the recruiting and drafting or it's been the development at the club, I think that's an area of concern for us for a long time. But it also seems a lot of the time when we bring players in from other clubs, unless they're experienced veterans like a Luke Parker, they stagnate or go backwards. I guess not to defend either of those two, but I think there's a lot of questions at the club at the moment. But yeah, I think some of Brady Rawlings' decisions, I mean, you mentioned it just before, but even it always feels like we lose out in trades and other clubs, and I hate to think like this, but North Melbourne's always been obviously a smaller club, but I've loved that we're tough. We have that Shinboner spirit, but it just feels like sometimes we get taken advantage of by other clubs, especially when it comes to trading and drafting. They see us coming and they shortchange, and they end up the ones that kind of laugh out of that deal. And that's where the disappointing part comes in for me, is that, like, if you're going to have to give up a player like we did with Horne-Francis, you want to get the most out of that and eke every bit out. It just feels like we've rolled over on so many occasions and been quite soft in that area. Regardless of drafting and recruiting other players, feels like other clubs can see us coming from a mile away, which has been really hard. And unless you get that hard-nosed, ruthless edge, which we'll also talk about when it comes to our footy as well, but I think without that, you're not going to go anywhere quickly. So there is some question marks around that. A recruiting team can set you up. Like, Geelong never look like they're rebuilding. And it's because they just make really good decisions on and off the field. So I think if we get that area of our game right, we'll be successful for a long time. It just hasn't happened for us yet, Dean. So if that's a personnel thing, we'll find out with Scott Clayton. And, of course, you never know where Rawlings will end up.
Hopefully in Tassie. But, look, don't know. This is not a personal thing. It's just, a business decision. And unfortunately, you just got to move on. We'll just all we have to do is look up, where we are as a football club and our list build. Because as far as I know, Siobhan, there are other players you can draft besides midfielders.
Absolutely, and that's where my biggest sort of frustration lies. when it comes to Clayton and Rawlings, and even of recent times, the drafting and decisions that we've made. It has felt like it's been so heavily dominated by midfielders and half forwards that they've been scared to draft key position players. But this is why we're in a really awful situation at the moment with the list, is because there's been poor decisions made around not recruiting those sorts of players. And a player which we'll touch on a bit later, and Will Phillips as well, is struggling to stay in the side. And we could have again gone with a key position forward. It's more repeated mistakes again and again. When the opportunities have presented itself to recruit key position players, we haven't done it, and that's why the build is so skewed. And then with a lot of our recruiting, we've picked up. I always think that the clubs never let go of really good players, and we seem to have paid overs for those at times too. So, it's been disappointing, because I think the wheel still hasn't turned yet, maybe also because of this build, and because of we'll talk about this a little bit, I'm sure too, but not being able to recruit defensive minded players either. I think it's a lot of the same sort of player, which is why I think we find ourselves in the predicament we do too.
Yeah, I mean, probably having too many outside players as well, not enough inside players. But we could keep going on about this, but we'll move on. Unfortunately, a player that is on the fringes of the team that's probably, it could be done, curtains for him, is Miller Bergman, doing an ACL injury, out of contract at the end of the year. Wasn't in a frame during the course of the year, was okay in the reserves, getting 12 to 15 touches, giving a bit of rebound off the halfback flank. This doesn't look promising for his football career, does it, Siobhan?
No, it's very sad, Dean. Obviously, he also did his shoulder in his first game, if you think way back when. So I think it's a young player that's really struggled with getting his body right, and maybe got blooded a bit too early, which is almost why I'm happy that we have let Matt Whitlock settle back into VFL just to get himself right, because the rigors of AFL footy, it's a tough gig, especially if you're a young developing player. But I think for Paul Miller, obviously an ACL 12-month injuries, hasn't got that consistency at the top level, and also with his body. And I think with this injury, it probably spells curtains. He just hasn't quite grabbed his opportunity, or knocked down the door in the VFL when he has had his chance. But it's interesting because we are still crying out for that small defender. Obviously, Jackson Archer out for a sustained period of time with that hamstring. That position on the ground, I think, is still up for grabs. And it's just really unfortunate for the young man that he's unable to kind of break into the side. But yeah, with Goda out still and a few other players, I think that's an area of the ground, Dean, where we really need some stability.
I haven't heard much about Godo lately. It seems like he's 3 or 4. It's always 3 or 4 weeks away. Yeah. He's been 3 or 4 weeks away. It feels like for about 6 months.
Yes, the really frustrating part.
Yeah, 3 or 4 weeks away from being 3 or 4 weeks away. It feels like. So yeah, unfortunately. But look, Riley Hardiman has come in. He's looks like a promising young talent. So that's good. At least they didn't drop him, which is or put him. Well, they might put him as a sub. Who knows?
Been really impressive.
He's been good.
You'd hope not.
No, definitely not. So it could be it for Miller Bergman. Who knows? But the club sometimes will delist players and put them on a rookie deal if, just to show a bit of loyalty.
I think it means for us, though, we do have more flexibility when it comes to the mid-season draft. So I think we actually are able to bring someone else onto the list if he goes onto the long-term injury list. So it does give us an opportunity to potentially grab someone in that area of the draft.
Yeah, I wouldn't back us to hit that one out of the park, to be honest with you, with recent history. But I haven't really looked too much into it. But I think it's only a couple of weeks away, mid-season draft. So it does give us an option to get someone in. We'll talk about that more over the next week or two, I'm sure. A couple of players have got 1-year extensions, Robert Hansen and Jacob Costanti. I think Costanti hit a trigger to get another year. Hardly big news, but a couple of players with a little bit of upside, Siobhan.
Absolutely. I mean, with Robert Hansen, I wasn't sure where this year would take him, but when he was in the side, especially in that Melbourne game, he really showed a lot of promise. Obviously, is playing VFL at the moment, hasn't quite been able to break back into the side, but I think he has a future ahead of him. Absolutely. I think he's very much a confidence player, but I loved sort of his role in the side where he was able to use his pace and even deliver the ball inside 50. I think he's got a really good skill set when he's up and about. I think his role definitely is more a low possession, high impact sort of player. He just needs to probably find the scoreboard a little bit more, but that'll all come with time. I think he's made grand improvements in the short term. So looking forward to seeing what he has in store for him. And then yeah, I'd love your thoughts on Constanti too, Dean, but he's a player at the moment where I just don't know whether he's doing enough. I
Hmm.
understand his role in the side, but um, look, for me personally, anyway, I think the role as a small forward. Obviously, he's added a new dynamic in the fact that he's able to pressure and chase and harass and tackle. But I think he needs to be hitting the scoreboard more and having more impact on the game if he's going to have so few disposals. I'm not saying that he has to turn into Keziah Pickett or Tom Papley overnight, but I think he needs to be putting a bit more of an output out there to retain his spot in the side. I think Jacob Constanti kind of reflects the lack of that sort of player that we have. And obviously, with Paul Curtis not being in the side due to that absolutely farcical suspension, it kind of gives him an opportunity in the next few weeks to get his act together. Otherwise, I think his role's probably under a bit of threat.
Yeah, look, he's been getting a few more opportunities than I would have thought he would have by now. I don't know if he was shuffling himself when he kicked that goal against Carlton because he's been quiet ever since. He's barely touched the ball in the last couple of weeks. And, I mean, it's all good and well putting a little bit of pressure on,
Yeah.
but anyone can do that. Like that should be a bare minimum as an AFL football. He's got average pace. His kicking skills are okay. He's just not getting enough of it. Like he's getting 5 or 6 touches a game. I would have moved on from him this week, to be honest with you. I would have looked to put Parker in a forward
Yep.
50 role this
Yep.
week because he could play a pressuring small forward role. To be honest with you, he could probably do it a lot better than Constanti.
Yep.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a little bit there, but I mean, I don't think he's going to be a star player. I think he can be a role player.
Yep.
Robert Hansen, I've got a little bit more high hopes. It's just, a few little efforts when he was playing in the seniors, like
Yep.
where he probably didn't put his body on the line. Like he's a very skinny frame, I understand that. And a few times he didn't put his body on the line when he kind of had to go, and that's
Yep.
probably cost him his spot. But I do like the upside there. There's he's got a high skill set. Like you said. He generally hits targets with his left foot. So, he's someone to definitely work with. But, I mean, at the end of the day, they're probably a couple of small forwards for us for at least for the next couple of years. And,
Absolutely.
we'll go from there. Well, I might as well go straight to the team changes. Yes, and this is the big news and a travesty of justice. And we'll get straight into it. No Darcy Tucker, Siobhan. How do you feel about that?
Oh, Dean, I did have a smile across my face when I saw that donut stat line, and I just thought of you straight away. Yeah, good decision again. Obviously don't think he's done enough to knock his way back into the side. A few I also thought of you with Geordie Payne, so we'll see what ends up happening. I hope.
I don't want him to play Siobhan. He's going to get killed this week. He's not going to get a touch. He's going to get frostbite, and then they'll probably drop him. So I actually want to protect him a bit this week. I know that's the wrong way of looking at it, but I don't think it's a good week for him to debut. I know he's at home in front of his Tassie family, so they might give him a debut. But I'd rather protect him this week, to be honest with you, Siobhan. I want to protect the kid. He's my third born child, really. So I don't know. Like, I'm sorry to cut you off there, but I just wanted to get that in. But I mean, we'll see what happens, I guess, with him.
Yeah, no, I think He's a real possibility, Dean, to come in. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case because I think with Paul Curtis out, I hate to harp on it, but I really felt like against Essendon, if he was playing, that we would have got over the line. He's such an important player, and I genuinely can't believe how much he's come on in leaps and bounds for us this year. So maybe that's a hole in the side that we're looking to fill. And it's possible that Geordie Payne comes in to fill that. But I think the big one here to discuss is obviously the omission of Will Phillips. I don't know if this side's allergic to defensive midfielders because there's no surprise that we actually played really well without with Will Phillips in the side. And I'm surprised that they've gone down this path to omit him. I thought when he came in that they were potentially going to play him on merit. And I think the real frustration for me upon further reflection for Thursday night is why we let Merritt run around like a maniac, especially in that last quarter. Essendon were on their knees. They obviously had no bench, and it was pretty clear that the only player that was going to win it for them was going to be Zach Merritt. And yet we let him. What we've done so often in the past with star midfielders, they just rip us a new one. And I really thought, okay, maybe a bit of a close guard on him with Phillips might do the job, and they just didn't. They chose not to go down that path, and I think at the end of the day, it was probably the difference in the game. So unless they thought there was no tagging role for him this week against the Lions, which is crap anyway, because they've got star midfielders coming out of their bum. So that's probably the first part of that, but also the ins are really interesting in Pink, who's already been selected in the squad, so we think he comes in for Callan Dawson. Obviously Archer's a big loss, and if they go down the path of replacing him with Zach Fisher, then we'll see how that plays out. Obviously Cora and Logue potentially coming back. Wardlaw slots straight back in, so clearly they've gone Phillips for Wardlaw, but I really thought that those two could coexist in that midfield, considering I still feel like our midfielders are not defensively minded enough to actually chop the defence out. So they've obviously decided in their minds that it's Wardlaw or Phillips, and Wardlaw obviously takes precedence just with the runs on the board. But yeah, really, really disappointed with that decision, I think. And I've been critical of Will Phillips, but Phillips and Wardlaw deserve to be in the same side with each other.
Just on that, Jared has come in. He said, is he getting told what he needs to improve to get a regular game, or is it just balance? Look, I'm not in those conversations like you aren't, Siobhan, so I'm not too sure if the coaching staff are communicating that to him. Just on that, like, I know we're a big fan of Luke Parker, but he's 32 years old. He's not going to be part of the next, good team of the football club. It wouldn't be a bad idea just to put him in a half-forward flank forward pocket for the next couple of weeks and giving Will Phillips a bit of a run at it. I mean, at the end of the day, if it costs you, like, it's not going to cost us a win this week. We're not going to get close to Brisbane. But if it's going to, look, you can afford to do it this week. Just trial him, see how he goes against Richmond. Do it again, and just play Luke Parker. I mean, Luke Parker played in the forward 50 for Sydney Swans last year and did a good job. If things get bad and we get overrun and overwhelmed and so forth, then you've got that option. And at the end of the day, Luke Parker's not going to do any worse than Jacob Constanti as a small forward, is he?
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think to this point in the season, the biggest shock for me, not that I'm complaining because I think he's an absolute star and has been one of our best players for the whole year. I'm really surprised with how many CBAs he's had. I thought he was coming to the club to play more of a half forward role. And I think the big thing is for me, when we brought these guys in, that they were going to fill a role but not take away from players. And Luke Parker deserves his spot in the side. And to be honest, I actually think he'd be in the top 3 in the BNF right now. He's been outstanding. But I feel like, it's probably time that we maybe trial those two and give, like you said, Parker more time at half forward. But in the same breath, I'll say something completely contradictory here, but I think having him in the centre with that bigger frame to get the ball out to players on the outside has actually worked many times for us as well. He doesn't show any signs of slowing down either. Luke Parker's been excellent for us this year, but you raise a very good point. On mature age recruits that we brought in, I think the other shock for me tonight was the fact that Jack Darling kept his spot. I thought that maybe we would rest him going over to Tassie again in a game where, I'll be real here, it's a very slim chance of us winning the game. And I thought on the weekend, his role, I never thought he was coming in to kick 50 goals, and that won't happen. But I also think that he's a bit of a hindrance at the moment if he is not able to fulfill his role in the way of allowing guys like Curtis and Larky and Zerha time and space and to bring a defender away and create a bit more of a decoy option. But I just feel like at the moment he's looking a bit slow and maybe was in need of a rest. I don't know that because I'm not within the four walls of the club, but it just looks like that on the field. And in winnable games like we've got coming up against Richmond, etc., I think that's more when I think he should be fit and firing and playing in games like that. But they know more than me, but I was a little bit surprised to see him not rested this week too.
Or maybe, I don't know, because we're playing Brisbane. They want the big, mature bodies. I'm not too sure because it does look a bit slow, that forward line with Malley, Jack Darling and Nick Larkey, Cameron Zerha. I think Dane Zorko is going to have a field day and do whatever he wants, and no one's going to be able to really catch him. So, yeah, I wouldn't have minded getting Darling out just for this week, just for a rest, like you sort of said, and maybe getting another small forward in, whether it's Hanson, Cooper Harvey. Give him an opportunity. He's out of contract at the end of the year. He's got to get a chance sooner or later just to see if he's up to it. So, yeah, I don't mind that. I mean, last couple of weeks, Jack Darling, he kind of looks a little bit washed, Siobhan, which we kind of expected when we recruited him. Are you worried about him long term? Because, I don't know, what did we give him, a 5-year deal or something like that, like we do with every player that comes to the club? I think we gave him like 2 or 3 years, didn't we?
Look, I'm not worried about it because I think he was actually a real shining light in the first few rounds of the year with what he was able to do for our other forwards. So I know he's not there maybe to kick goals as per se, but he's there to allow our other forwards to teach them, to give them some wisdom, etc., but also to be a bit, like I mentioned, like a decoy, able to give them a pathway to kicking more goals. But I don't know whether or not he's having the same impact. Well, I know he's not having the same impact that he did at the start of the year. And then it begs the question too, like I really liked what we had with Bryn Teakle at points last year as well. And I think he maybe at some point is due an opportunity. And I'm still to this point in the season surprised we haven't tried Charlie Comben forward. I still have big doubts about him as a defender. I think teams know how to exploit him one-on-one as a defender. And this week against Brisbane is going to be a real tough challenge for everyone back there, but certainly for Charlie, who I think he struggles a bit, Dean, when he's forced to play a one-on-one sort of role. And I just don't think he's built for it. I think he is still the natural forward. This is the big debate that I'm sure will rage on for the rest of the year too. And it's also interesting looking at this team about whether or not, obviously we'll find out more tomorrow, Clarkson goes to the old trusty head in Aiden Core. But I personally think that we've looked really good when we've rejigged our backline. It's clear in the stats that we're conceding less points, but I also think we've looked better. Are you of the same opinion?
Yeah, it looks a bit more versatile. And I did notice Pink has come into the team for Callum Dawson. Griffin Logan, Aiden Core on the bench. Aiden Core maybe comes in for Jackson Archer.
Yep.
And look, he might be forced to play as almost as a small defender, to be honest with you, because I don't think we've got much else. Luke McDonald's a bit slow. Aiden Core can cover the ground quite quickly.
Luke McDonald's another talking point, isn't he?
Well, that last quarter, the kick to a ruckman against Luke Parker, and then decided to try and kill a contest, make up for it, and then left Kako by himself in the last to kick an easy goal, front and square. That was a bit tough, but look, he does try hard, I guess. But I mean, when does that? When does that just become the standard where, if you try hard, that's almost good enough? Jacob Costanzi tries hard, but that shouldn't be the standard. Trying hard is the minimum. We've got to get past that. We've got to, move forward. If we want to move forward as a football club, then sometimes you've got to make tough decisions and go to the next player, whoever that is. Like, I think we've been quite successful in the last couple of weeks in blooding Riley Hardiman. He seems to have grown each week. So, it might be time for a couple others to come in and get that opportunity. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, Callum Dawson goes out of the team omitted. Is that a fair call, you think? Because they've gone with I think it's Toby Pink that's come in for him. Toby Pink was quite good in the reserves last week, intercepted
Yeah.
a lot. So I think he does deserve that opportunity. But do you think Callum Dawson's a bit stiff?
I think he is. Look, I'm not unhappy with that because I think when Toby Pink's come into the side too, Dean, we've looked really settled. We actually have looked quite good with him there. So I think it's fair. Dawson was okay, and has been okay since he's come in, but maybe that spells the end of sort of his trial in the side. I like Pink, and I think he'll be a great addition. So I'm definitely not upset with that. I'm also a bit surprised about Bailey Scott, if you want my honest opinion there too, Dean. I think he's sort of fade away this year. Probably.
Yeah, well, let's talk about him. I mean, yeah, we'll talk about him now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a really surprised by that. I don't understand, Dean, how. And good on Dylan Stevens. He deserves every plaudit that he gets. But I'm really surprised. If you said to me at the start of the year that Dylan Stevens would have gone past Bailey Scott, I probably would have laughed at you. Yeah, I'm really surprised he kept his spot. And maybe Clarkson's just trying to give him a full game and sort of get his confidence back up. I think maybe going back to the reserves knocked him around a little bit. But coming in and having such little impact on the game like he did was a real shock because for him, I think his key attributes are sort of his pressure was really good in the side, and he ran all day, and used the ball quite well, and all those things kind of seem to be missing from his game at the moment. So, yeah, it's a disappointing kind of tale from this year for him. But let's see how he goes on the weekend, and hopefully gets his confidence back.
It's a big fall from grace. Back to back, top three in the best and fairest last 2 years, and yeah, he looks a shadow of the player that represented the last couple of years. I think he might get dropped this week, to be honest with you. He's on an extended bench. A couple of his efforts were really poor last week as well. He lost a one-on-one contest to Todd Goldstein, who almost had a walker out there. He was moving that slow, and there was a chase on Kako. Look, he made good ground, but he didn't. He tackled with his arms. He needs to go in with the shoulder and go a lot harder. But yeah, he didn't do it. So yeah, I think he'll get dropped. He played half the game last week. I think he came on just after half time and only had 3 touches. So yeah, we can't. Yeah, you can't have that.
Tina, I've got a question for you. Do you think that we're playing our players or using our weapons in the most effective way possible? Do you think that the team's a bit unsettled at the moment with where we're not maximising what we have in our arsenal? The reason I ask that too is I think Dersma it's awesome that he has the ability to step up in those big moments and kick, critical goals like he did in the last quarter against Essendon. But are we utilising him enough? Are we playing Sheasel in the right spot? Are we not getting enough at the moment?
I think it goes back to my point that it's an imbalanced list, and you're trying to fit too many square pegs in round holes. You're playing midfielders half forward pocket, and half back. Colin McKercher hasn't had a CBA this year, which is a little bit surprising. I remember at the start of the year, Lee Adams in the preseason was sort of saying, "Oh yeah, Finn O'Sullivan, he'll start in the back line or on the wing, and then we'll push him in the midfield." Like, how the hell is he going to get in the midfield? I mean, who's he going to take? We just talked about Will Phillips getting out of the team. He's not going to. He won't be taking Wardlaw. He won't be taking LDU. He won't be taking Parker. Tom Powell, I don't think you'll be taking his spot as well. So I don't know how he's going to get in the midfield. So it's a bit of a strange thing to say. I just think it comes anyway. Getting back to the question, I think it just comes down to an imbalanced list. To be honest with you, so. Yeah, there's just too many players that are playing out of position. Zane Dersma, probably his best position is inside the forward 50. But at the moment, we're trialling him on the wing, which is fair enough. I mean, he couldn't do any worse than probably Bailey Scott at the moment. And he's been quite, every time he gets it, he usually does something pretty good. And, you're pretty confident he will do something well with it. He kicked a really nice goal in the last quarter. Just getting back to that anyway. Yeah, it's just an imbalanced list at the moment, Siobhan, and we're trying to work something out.
I agree with you there. I think the addition of Finbar Maley though I loved his game, and obviously we might touch on that a little bit now, but he was excellent. And I think that gave us a bit of assurance up forward. Like his kicking's not great, but his marking ability is awesome, and that was a real positive on the night. And that looks like not a square peg in a round hole. That's a round hole in a round hole. He he deserves to keep his spot and keep playing up at that end of the ground because I thought he was really good. And I'm happy he's playing again this week.
Jack has come in, a bit more of a positive pod, which is nice. I don't know if he's been listening, if he thinks this is positive. But he can't say I was as a fan of negativity being thrown around last week about Constanti. Bloke gives his absolute all and only 20 years old, 8 games in. Look, he does try hard, but at the end of the day, I think there's better players than him that should be getting opportunity from what I've seen. I think Cooper Harvey's averaging 2 goals a game in the reserves. And Geordie Payne has looked pretty good in the reserves. Do you keep going with a player that's played getting 5 or 6 touches a game? I thought he should have been dropped after the Carlton game for disciplinary reasons, for shushing a crowd when you're 79 points down. That to me is not the standard you want to set. But there is upside there. He's got another year, so there's nothing wrong with being dropped as well. But thanks for coming in, Jack, anyway. But
it raises the point about Eddie Ford for me. I mean, where is he at the moment? It's a real difficult one because at the start of the year, I didn't have Constanti in the team because I had Ford ahead of him. But it kind of looks like he's in a bit of no man's land at the moment.
Well, he's playing on the wing in the reserves as well.
About sort of the positional changes as well. I was surprised to see them not have him in his traditional role as a half forward, which I think when he's up and about, he's actually very good at.
No, that's right. And it probably comes down to we've just got too many players at too many midfielders, so they're going to the forward 50, which is squeezing him out. Look, I've been an Eddie Ford fan since the start of the year. I think he's the best 22 player. But based on balance, he can't get a game, unfortunately, unless there's injuries. His form reserves has been okay, but I think he's pretty much at the crossroads, to be honest with you, Siobhan. He had a contract at the end of the year. There was a sign last year, even when he only got a 1-year extension. Look, I think he's a player that if he moved on from us, I think there'd be teams lining up to give him a chance because he's a high-quality player and deserves another opportunity. So somewhere else. But, it's always hard. If you don't get a game at one of the worst teams in the competition, then your opportunities at other clubs might be limited, Siobhan.
That's true. And that, it's like you mentioned, I think it all comes back down to balance, and we just don't seem to have a lot of that at the moment, which is causing all sorts of issues for us, I think.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Now, you probably haven't. It's fair to say you haven't been a big fan of Jai Simpkin, the captain, probably last few weeks. I know you sent me a message after a game one time. Look, his skills do let him down, but I mean, I don't think he's going to get dropped or anything like that. Where do you see him, his best position long term? Because he seems to be 1 week half forward, next week in the midfield half forward. I mean, do you see him? I guess, where do you see him long term?
I'm glad you raised him because I'm also thrilled that we're talking about it tonight because I thought he had clearly his best game of the season against Essendon on Thursday night. So I'm in a much more positive frame of mind when it comes to Jai after his performance. I thought, other than something that I'll raise in a moment, but I thought maybe the adversity that the club had during the week with, dare I say his name, Kane Corns, and the treatment of our football club and of Jai and Harry, and I think maybe he found a new gear due to that, and I would hate to think that he'd need ammunition to play well, but I thought the 2 goals he kicked were really good, and he's endeavour, which you can never question, was at another level. And I thought he made some good choices at times, which I think is where I get frustrated with him, is that I think his skills aren't great and his decision making isn't great. And I think he isn't to me anyway, an outward leader, someone that screams captain. But I also think that on Thursday night he was excellent and had his best game of the year. Maybe it's where he's playing. When I think of a captain of an AFL club, maybe I'm biased here, but I think of the first one that comes to mind is like a Patrick Cripps who sort of leads from the front every week and puts the team on his back. I don't see that with Jai. I think Jai is the sort of captain that's going to be perfect for taking us through these tough times. And then you'll maybe see the emergence of Larky or Sheasel when we really start to take off like the aeroplane in the air. He's kind of drives the runway captain is the way I sort of look at it at the moment. It's really difficult to pick his best position on the ground because I still don't trust him all the time with ball in hand, which is frustrating. And I think his impact on games wanes. So you kind of see him one moment and then you don't for a while. What I think was impressive about his game against Essendon was he was consistent. You saw him a lot. Where I think, when your captain's dipping in and out of games, it's hard to trust them week in, week out. I still think he's a good midfielder because he gives support to the young boys in the middle. But again, having him and Parker and then LDU, who never seems to move out of there, and then you've got Powell and you've got Wardlaw who's back, and there's so many options to run through there. Do you like him as a half forward or do you like him as a midfielder?
Depends on how the game's going. I know every year we seem to always want to push him out of the midfield. Like at the start of the year, look, he's going to play high half forward. We're going to put him in a forward pocket and so forth. And then about 3 or 4 rounds in, when we're struggling, we always push him back into midfield because we feel like we need that bigger body, a bit of seniority in there. So, it's a bit of a mixture on how the game is going. To be honest with you, Siobhan, and this might be a controversial take, if I was a club, I'd probably, and I know Rawlings isn't going to do this because it's not his way, but I'd probably look to almost trade him at the end of the year. Wow. I know he's a captain of the club, but we've got too many midfielders as it is. Yep. He's 27 on a long-term contract. I know people will talk about culture, but the culture's shit anyway at the moment. I mean, we lose every week. And, they'll talk about the culture inside the 4 walls, but it's what happens outside the 4 walls on a football field that matters the most. That's where your culture's at. Yeah, I know that's a bit of a controversial take, but we've got too many midfielders at the moment. So, and he probably has a bit of value around the league. That's something I'll definitely look at, but I know the club won't do that. But because I think he's a midfielder, a mid-tier club. I think if he went to Essendon or something like that, he'd be almost their best midfielder outside of Merritt, of course.
Yep.
But he'd certainly fit somewhere down there. I'm surprised they don't try him on a wing, to be honest with you, Siobhan, as well. Then I think he that role would suit him quite well as well.
I agree with that. I think Dylan Stephens has done absolutely nothing wrong to move him from there. So I think he's probably cemented his spot there. I genuinely can't believe we're talking about this in this way, but he's been really good and he was excellent.
He's been solid,
yeah. So look, he's a really hard one. It's a very brave call. I don't think that they will, but I also understand what you're saying. I think it's dangerous to rip fabric out of the club when we have so little of it at the moment anyway, if that makes any sense. I think everyone's still so new and you want rusted on shin boners, and I think Jai has been part of that. Look, I look back to when he first got drafted to the club and he came in as a kid who was ranked very high to go very high in the draft and broke his leg, kind of slid to our pick 12, and then came in and was kind of part of that old era of when Zach Zeeble was captain, and I know he lived with him for a while, and his journey has been a really good one. It's just I think he's also symptomatic of the list build here in that he doesn't look settled to me, and his best games are when we kind of put him in the midfield, but there's just not enough room for him to play full games there, and maybe that is why he wanes in and out of the contest at times. But look, I don't trust his kicking, but on the weekend, on Thursday, the goals that he kicked, like you can't knock his endeavour, but it's such a hard one. I can't seem to come up with the answer myself, but I don't think he'll be dropped from the side. Let's put it that way.
No, definitely won't be. But look, at the end of the year, I think they might change captains at the end of the year, and that's better for him. At the end of the day, I think that'll be a lot better for him. The pressure off that, and being the face, and the responsibility for all when things are going wrong. He has to answer to the media. I think that'll be better for him.
Yeah.
Jack came in again. What do we think of trying to trade Bailey Scott at the end of the year 24? The fact is a winger certainly ups his currency too. as far as I know, I don't think Gold Coast showed any interest in him last year.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of years ago they did, but to be honest with you, I don't think we'll get much for him right now. So no, look, I think
Look, Dean,
they've
I've
got
still
plenty.
got I've still got faith that he'll turn it around. I don't know about you, but I think he's good enough to turn it around.
Oh yeah, and continue to work hard. I think he comes out of the team this week, but we'll see how we go. I was just looking at the Lions team, and one of my favourite players from an opposition team is Logan Morris. Geez, I'd love to have him in my football club. You can already see it. Why wouldn't you go to his manager and say, "We'll offer you 6 years, $6 million to an up and coming star"? He's going to be a star of the competition. I've got no doubt about that. He's a real special talent from Melbourne. Why wouldn't you go for a player like that rather than a player like that, Braden Maynard, whose best football is behind him? I know he has a bit of experience and so forth, but he's not the long term answer. This guy could be. I mean, he could be. Not the next Wayne Carey, but like someone to build around with the other players that you got at the moment, like Sheasels, LDUs, and so forth.
No, it's a good point, Ian, and something that I haven't necessarily thought of. I think when we recruited Callum Coleman Jones, we paid overs for him most definitely with that pick 19 to Richmond. But I think we probably had hopes that he would potentially be that sort of player. But Logan Morris definitely has more runs on the board in that area. And certainly should be a target. We need to really start scouting the competition for young, upcoming key positions, key defenders that have some runs on the board that will be willing to come across. And clearly, he'd be a best 22 player and someone that would be of great value to us. And what I loved about Logan Morris's season last year was, I guess, he came in under cloud of a sort of replacing McCarthy, and they had a few other players that went down Brisbane and took his opportunity with both hands and has cemented himself as a really fine player in that side. So obviously the Lions are going to be a formidable opponent, Dean. It really worries me about what sort of damage they might do. But what's impressive about these sorts of teams, and I think Clarkson always refers to our rebuild to almost running in a similar pathway or similar vein to what Brisbane did. And I know we've spoken about this a lot too, that it doesn't feel like it, because I think
definitely doesn't.
Yeah, they've drafted and done things differently, but they're almost rebuilding on the run too. They lost Danaher, but then it gives Morris a chance to step up. And I don't know whether or not we've got the arsenal to even compete with them on the weekend, let alone sort of follow the path that they've gone down. But they've done things very well. And if we can do half as well as Brisbane with their build, then I think we're a good possibility to, win a flag with this group. That they're a real model side at the moment. I think I've got a lot of respect for them as a club.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I know people talk about, well, they've been looked after getting the Ashcroft boys for basically nothing, but, they still drafted this kid at pick 31. I was looking at Cal Toomey's Phantom board, which I think Rawlings and, what's his name, Scott Clayton did for the last 5 years, just to see what was about. He projected him to go pick 25 or something like that to Collingwood. So, that was a couple of years ago. But, they still found him out of nowhere, and geez, he's a special talent, and I'm not looking forward to seeing how he goes this week. But I mean, we'll just quickly preview the game. Is it important to get off to a good start, or could we just give him another start and just work our way back? You think, Siobhan, just give him 4 or 5 goal lead at the start, and then we should be able to claw it back, shouldn't we?
Look, I think this weekend, Dean, the biggest thing, and I'll make my opinion clear very quickly off the bat, is that it's going to be a difficult game for us to win, and even probably be really close in. So I think that the things to look out for me anyway, is going to be how we start. That's cost us 2 weeks in a row. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind about that. That needs to be addressed and needs to be figured out why. I think for me on Thursday night, the most disappointing part of that was that after it was a backs against the wall week for us, we had the controversy with Corns and I'm sure the disappointment of the loss against Port. I thought we'd come out firing and we just were limp, and that was the part that was most disappointing. And I don't want to see that again this week. They've got to rectify that and come out all guns blazing to start the game and give themselves a chance. So that's the big start for us is the way that we start the game. I also think for us it's the skills and what I've observed and what I love your thoughts on too is our ability to just kill ourselves by overusing the ball. I don't know if it's a game plan thing or if it's a young group still not wanting the responsibility or still finding their way. But it just seems that we handball or over possess the ball too much, give the ball to a teammate that's under more trouble, and then we get killed on the turnover, or we butcher a golden opportunity for us. I don't think that we've got the skill set to be doing that at the moment, and that's pretty clear. But is it a game plan issue or a game day issue?
I think I'm not too sure. Their game plan seems to change. I don't know, every 5 minutes during the course of the game. You sort of see they go for the overlap handball a bit too much and get themselves into trouble, turn it over. Sometimes they slow it down, they still turn it over. So yeah, they're in between a rock and a hard place at the moment. But it's been a bit strange. Like we talk about skills and how that's fallen off. Even like a good ball user like Caleb Daniel has probably butchered it a little bit too much for my liking this year as well. So I don't know. I mean, the game is based on if you can capitalise on a team's turnovers. Every team turns it over. I looked at the ladder in turnovers. I think we're middle tier, but it's where we're turning over as well in our defensive 50, which might be an issue with that. But we certainly got a lot better than that in the second half last week, and we probably didn't butcher as much, and we get a bit of rebound and able to put a lot more forward half pressure on. And our team defense was a lot better after quarter time. That was
Definitely.
clear. Yeah, so and that's a big thing. I mean, there's no doubt you're going to turn it over. It's where you turn it over and how you defend that turnover is the most important thing. Just like those starts, like I don't know, we just look like we're not switched on from the first bounce. The last 2 weeks, like last week, even at the first bounce, Harry Sheasel does an uncharacteristic rush kick out of a pack that goes straight to, I can't remember, it might have been Durham or even Merritt or something like that, and they get a goal within the first 30 seconds. A repeat of the Port Adelaide game. It's just like first 5 minutes of, last 2 weeks or first 10 minutes, it seemed like we just switched off from the start. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely, and that's been the most disappointing thing, I think, against Port and against Essendon. I think they've scored within the first 10 seconds of the game. I remember it was Georgiades and I think it was Langford or one of their other tools, the Bombers. I couldn't believe it. And it was really it's disappointing because they need to be switched on from the start of the game, and it's almost as if, especially with a young group that just is accustomed to losing, it's like the second they get off to a good start, kick 1 or 2 goals, and then we haven't scored, you can sort of see their heads drop. I think football's definitely a game that's played between the ears, and I think it's not a fitness issue with us because we seem to be running games out well. It's more not being switched on or kind of one goal. Clarkson summed it up really well a few weeks back about beaten dog syndrome. So it's almost as if, we get behind and it's like, oh, here we go again. And I think there could be to be commended on the fact that when that's happened, they've fought back, but it's about not getting to a position where you have to fight back. And I think on the weekend, if we do let it happen again against a side like Brisbane, there is no coming back. You forget about it. It'll just be another whitewash. So they've got a challenge ahead of them, but I think it should be drummed home that, you've got to start better. And it is just uncharacteristic fumbles and mistakes from players like Sheasel at the start of the game too that you wonder, are they prepared from the moment the ball's bounced?
It feels like it takes us. Last 2 weeks, it's taken us a good quarter to get going. And we've generally been slow starters. I know the Good Friday game was a slow start. We're 5 goals down, and we came back in the second quarter, then fell apart again. And it seems to just be a common theme this year. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're working on it as much as they can, but it's up to the players.
Did you get to this point in the rebuild and expect that we could string 4 quarters of footy together, or am I the only one that's a bit disappointed by that aspect of the game?
Oh, at least 3.
Yeah.
3.5. I expect the odd bad quarter here and there still, but yeah, I mean, it seems to be, bad quarters and then another bad quarter or a bad half of a quarter. So yeah, look, it is what it is now. So yeah, it's a bit frustrating. That's all, especially when we've had good opportunities to win games the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We've just been a bit off in that by 5-10% at the start of the game, which has cost us. How do you see this one playing out? I don't know if it's going to be pretty or anything like that, but I assume you expect Brisbane's going to be far too strong.
Oh, I think so, Dean. I think the thing is that I'd like us to go back to being a little bit, play a tough game of footy and not allow it to be a complete whitewash. They've got stars all across the park. I'll pull my hair out if Lachie Neale gets to run around like Zach Merritt, though. So I think there's clear stars across the line for Brisbane, and look, they'll be too good just because of the personnel they have and the culture they have. They're probably where we want to be soon. I like the comparisons to our build to Brisbane. Whether we've done it right, I don't know. But they're the model that I always look at and go, if we can get there, then it's a job well done. The way that they've recruited guys like Dunkley and Charlie Cameron and Danaher when he was there, they've done it really well. It's the kind of the model that I hope that we can end up, getting like to be like one day. They'll be too good just because there's too many good players around the ground. But I hope we're competitive. I hope we start well, and I hope that we are able to have our moments during the game. But clearly, I think Brisbane will just be a bit too polished, a bit too experienced, and a bit too good.
Look, we're certainly hoping we can be competitive. I didn't realise it's our second last game in Tassie. Don't know if that's got anything to do with it.
Yeah.
So one more after this. And then we do the Perth games permanently. To be honest with you, Siobhan, I'm actually looking forward to moving away from Tassie now. I'm sick of seeing home games up there.
Yep. You and me both.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. Have you? I was going to say a potential match winner for us. Maybe a potential match saver for us that doesn't get out to more than 10 goals.
Look, I think a potential match winner, and I harp on about this guy a lot, but I'd like to see a full game from LDU. His first quarter, especially against Essendon, I honestly had my head in my hand. I don't know. He's symptomatic of the club a bit at the moment as well, where it's like he has his moments, he has quarters, but he just can't quite string a full game together against a really quality midfield with Dunkley and the Ashcroft boys and who else have they got? They got Zorko running through their Neil. They're high quality players everywhere. LDU, and I don't want to bring it up to be a negative thing, but this guy's getting paid at the top dollar, and he's our premium, sort of midfielder. I think it's a real opportunity for him to stand up against other premium midfielders and show his wares. So I'd like to see him put together 4 quarters, and if he can do that, we're a better side overall. It's as simple as that. So I think he could be a real match turner for us if he puts on a full quarter performance. So I'd probably say him, and then I think the other one here, I'll go left of field a little bit, and it'd be fun if you have the same thoughts as me. But I think potential match saver is probably going to be Luke McDonald. Because if he gets the job on Charlie Cameron, which I suspect he may, if Charlie Cameron comes out and kicks 6 or 7, then, the game's probably already lost and it's not looking positive for us at all. But if McDonald's able to quell Cameron's impact, and he's actually not in a great vein of form at the moment at all. But, you know what small forwards are like against us traditionally. So we'll see how he goes. But I'm sure he'd be disappointed with some of the efforts in the last quarter. So I think, it's a big week for him, and I hope he does well against Charlie Cameron. He's probably my match saver as such. What about for you?
I'll probably just play it safe and say Tristan Xerri. It's probably the only area of the ground that we can potentially beat Brisbane that. He can give first use in the midfield, and if he can do that, at least we can get the centre clearance, and it keeps us out of the back line for 20 or 30 seconds. So yeah, but that's about the only one I can think of. Wardlaw, he's looked pretty good in the couple of games
he was
played.
Just Julian. I know Todd Goldstein is obviously. How do I put it nicely for him? He's probably didn't expect to be playing as much footy as he's probably required to now at Essendon, but I cannot believe how incredible Tristan Sherry was, and what a player we have. What a player.
Yeah, look, Goldstein's done. I mean, he's 37 now, and his best football was a long time ago. But I won't forget the impact he had in football club. I mean, under those Brad Scott teams will make a prelims. He was pretty much carrying the club.
Incredible.
He was that good. Yeah, he was that good, Todd Goldstein. But yeah, he's passing the torch, I should say. So yeah. But that's about the only area of the ground I can see us winning a match-up in. Outside of that, it's going to be slim pickings. In saying all that, Siobhan, what's your final prediction?
Look, I think I've been fairly positive during this podcast, but I will be honest with you and say that I feel like it's probably Brisbane by 7 goals. They'll just be too good, and I think there will come a point in the game where we show some resistance, but the elastic band can probably only be stretched as far as, possible, and I think they'll probably run away with a big win. The fact it's in Tassie maybe gives us a bit of an advantage too, but yeah, they'd just probably be too good for us.
No, I'd probably go 40-plus points as well, to be honest with you. I think, I mean, it's just where the clubs are at. There's, it's first versus 17th for a reason, the reigning premiers. So, yeah, it's going to be tough work. But if they can keep it to 40, 45 points, I think you'd almost take that, Siobhan. Yeah, that's just where we're at. Anyway, Siobhan, it's been actually a long podcast. We've had a lot to catch up on. It's been a while. Any final messages out there for all your loyal fans?
It's been a real pleasure being back, Dean. And look, we're at round 9, and I feel exhausted. I've actually enjoyed that gap between the Thursday night game and the Sunday game, to be really fair, especially after I feel like I aged 5 years after the game on Thursday night too. So that's been a real pleasure catching up and talking footy with you. So hopefully this weekend is not a terrible result for us. And look, we've got winnable games coming up, and we've got Jesus reincarnated in Paul Curtis to come back in the side as well. So don't forget, there is some light at the end of this tunnel for us to have winnable games ahead. It's just about kind of riding the bumps of the games where we've got on the weekend, where it's just feels a little bit too far for reach for us. But we're still plenty of the year ahead. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm actually the same age as you, Siobhan. I just look 46 because that's how much the club has aged me over the years. But in all seriousness though, Siobhan, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I'm sure I'll chat to you soon. I know I remember after the Melbourne game, I tried to get you on because we never chat. We very rarely chat after a win, do we? Not that we've had many over the years.
So rare, Dean. It's maybe next week will be the week. So maybe
oh God, I can only hope. So
that'll be a podcast straight after the game if that's the case. But
I'll be messaging you 10 to 7 to talk about it. Don't worry about that. So when the game's over, but we can only hope, can't we?
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for coming on, Siobhan. I really appreciate it, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds good, Dean. Thanks so much.
And thank you to all you lovely listeners as well. I'll try and be back Monday evening this week. Unless we win on Sunday, then I'll be back Sunday night to go through our game against the Lions. Give a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell your mates and whoever about it. That's it from me. Bye for now, and go Roos.